do you have those? The third is really around transforming the IC function and the structure of the function, the efficiency of the function. And you know, some of this really comes from the fact that we're seeing the size of the IC function, and therefore the resources that are being invested in it increase significantly inside many organizations. So you know, I'm working on, and have worked on, a couple of really significant mergers over the last 18 months. You know, huge exercises, and I was surprised by the size of the communications departments inside those organizations. And VMA's survey showed that the number of IC teams with more than 25 members in their survey increased from 4% of the respondents to 23%. So there are a lot of IC teams out there now that are 25 people, you know, or bigger. And that's a significant expense. And to me, you know, that begins to sound like, and I've made this point before, that the journey that HR has gone on in the past, where, you know, it becomes a significant expense inside an organization, and therefore people will look to it to be efficient in the way it manages at that expense and the way it operates. Therefore, it's a surprise. In our survey responses, we ask people, so how much of the communications you send out or do is unplanned or ad hoc? And you know, this was consistent across EMEA, across size of organization, EMEA versus North America, sector, you know, very consistent that it roughly broke 45% was unplanned and ad hoc, 55% planned and ad hoc. So if you think about that from a kind of calendar year point of view, it means that almost from January to May, you're working for whoever and for whomever on stuff you don't know. You know, it's completely unplanned and ad hoc. And when you look at the increasing cost of the function, I think that kind of unplanned level of work, almost half of what IC does, is going to come under increasing pressure. For you not to be able to say, you know, what half of the stuff you're going to be doing during the course of the year is. Now, I'm not saying there that, you know, there is inevitably, having worked in mergers a lot, that it's inevitable there's a lot of stuff you can't always plan. But per my quote at the, you know, on the first slide, you know, lots of, no organization plans to fail, but lots of organizations fail to plan. And I think IC, you know, could be much more intentional about developing a plan for the year in order to drive down that percentage, and then be pushed back more when functions and people ask for that kind of ad hoc communications, because, hey, we've got a plan and it's not been built into that plan. We then kind of dug in within the survey and asked, well, what are you spending most of your time on? And supporting that message around, you know, ad hoc communications. These were the top 3 responses combined. So writing and sending content, feedback and approval, you know, planning and strategy and feedback and approvals were the top 3. Actually, the top response was writing and sending content. 73% of you said that was what you spent most of your time on. And if that's, you know, most of you spending most of your time on that, and most of that, and then, you know, 45% of that is unplanned and ad hoc, that's the sort of thing I think, you know, somebody looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of an IC function will investigate and say, is that getting us the sort of value add that we want? So as an example then, thinking of what can you do to address or improve that, you know, here's a great example of a way you can take something like performance management and actually think about a communications plan across the year. So, you know, I think a lot of what we do in IC, I absolutely get that some of it will inevitably be crises and things you can't predict, but there is a natural flow to the calendar year, for most of the processes an organization goes through. And I think you can plan those, including something like performance management, and you can plan those, across the calendar year, and therefore be much more intentional and thoughtful about when communications might land, and how you build a campaign. And actually, a lot of the work Newsweaver is doing with organizations is about trying to build campaigns, and a lot of their research, I think, shows that, when you do have that campaign and can build a theme, your final engagement and awareness will be much higher as well. So, there's, one good example of how you can build a campaign through the course of a year. And that I think can help to transform the function as well, introducing that greater calendar annual planning discipline. The second one is thinking about the internal communications service delivery model. So this is pretty much the structure that GSK and GE, I know, have introduced inside their internal communications functions, and it mirrors the structure that HR has introduced as they've looked to transform their function. GSK, by the way, noted when they spoke about this a few months ago that they saved £10 million just in their first year from introducing that meetings and events centre. So having a centre of excellence that was managing how they do meetings and events around the world. One place that was getting expertise around that. So having that discipline and those centres of excellence where people are experts on digital meetings, events, and then traditional comms. And then having the delivery capacity centrally built around intranet, and a service center, responding to stuff, and then all the other channels. And then out facing your customers, you have business partners. So, those are the people who really are sitting next to whichever line of business they're partnering with, and making sure they understand the strategy in that area of the business, and therefore are, bringing the right communications support to that area. The other great thing about introducing a structure like this is, I think, compared to 10 or 15 years ago when I began in the world of internal comms, there's much more of a career path here for internal communications people, working their way through a shared services role into a centre of excellence, and, becoming a business partner, and then ultimately leading an IC function inside a business. And career paths are significant drivers of engagement. So if you want to overcome that problem of people leaving, you need these sorts of structures so that you can hold on to people and show them the career path and show them how they can grow through the business.